Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Performance Talk. My name is Yul Gordon. I'm here today with my partner, Chris Costa. We are starting off the new year. This is one of our first recordings of the year. So, Chris, what do you have going on?
This is our first recording of the year, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I was just counting the other ones that are coming up this week. So,
the ones that we recorded before the year. First recording that we're doing
right
in 2024. So, welcome 2024. Welcome to Mr. Jim Beebe. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself so our listeners kind of know what your background is and where you come from.
That's the big loaded question, right? Especially in the interviews. Tell me a little bit about yourself. So, I'm 49. I live in the west side of Indianapolis. I run Unbreakableu Athletics Academy, born and raised in Cleveland. Whole background is finance, investments. Didn't grow up with much money. I didn't have a lot of resources, so didn't play a lot of sports. And our parents spent all their money on Catholic education. So by the time I got to high school, I didn't really play much and always was behind physically, athletically, always wanted to be an athlete. Kind of missed the boat there. Went to a really good school. They had a lot of state titles. I wasn't part of any of that. I was good at math and finance. Went on to Purdue for undergraduate in business, and then started my financial career because that's what I was good at. So years as a broker, financial investigator, wealth manager at JP Morgan, and 15 years in the industry. Had my MBA back at Purdue and kept with it. And it's 2011. I'm 300 pounds. I'm fat and out of shape. Can't run a mile. Couldn't bench press or squat my body weight. And it was hard of making people wealthier while I was getting unhealthier. Had 3 kids, out of breath, walking up and down the stairs. And you get to that bottom out phase like an alcoholic, and you're like, this isn't for me any longer. Luckily in 12, JP Morgan raised their financial standards. They wanted all of us to bring in $100 million in assets, or flows they call it, with assets into the bank, and our team fell short at 60. And so they were looking to get rid of us, and that's what happened about 6 months later. But end of 11 and early 12, I started doing P90X, running some 5Ks, and then group training, and then moved on to CrossFit at a gym that was down by my office. So kept with that, started losing a lot of weight, started getting healthier, started just learning the absolute basics, Jim Wendler's 5-3-1 program, things like that. And as 12 was progressing and they're moving us out, I sat there and went through like a 30-day, 45-day reflection period and thought, you know what, I think I'm done. I think I'm out. I really always want to be an athlete. I want to be around athletes. I want to see what it's like to push myself physically and learn some of the basics on coaching others at the most basic levels. So some certifications in CrossFit, powerlifting, strongman, some nutrition, and started in my garage just with a few folks, implementing the basic philosophies on movement, functional movements, getting people healthier, started getting better myself, started doing some local CrossFit competitions, and then in March of 13 opened Unbreakableu Athletics Academy on the west side of Indianapolis in Plainfield. Added in sports performance. I brought in some sports performance coaches to work with student athletes. I progressed into powerlifting and strongman, and I would compete at that at the amateur level. I'm in the Midwest and been running the gym ever since. So this March will complete 11 years. As we kept getting better and improving and working with more people and changing lives, I was gravitating more towards the student athletes with coaching. And then at some point you decide, hey, do I want to simply make my impact here locally, or can I expand my reach by opening up other gyms, or doing things online, or doing clinics? So the idea is the latter. So in 2022, I started working on 2 books. And so the more national, if you will, business is called Athlete Builder. And we work with student athletes in high school and some college kids locally and then remotely. And the idea is, can we progress them so they can become the best version of themselves? So that's what I'm at right now. So we still have the local gym, Unbreakableu Athletics, and then we're expanding a little bit nationally with Athlete Builder, mostly working with student athletes.
So
in that space.
Online training service is basically what it is.
Online, online, or I could be in person, but yeah, mostly online. We've been working on this for about 6 months. There's my own podcast, Athlete Builder, digital course, but remote coaching. And our space is mostly with the high school kids.
Sure.
A lot of them will have strength and conditioning coaches. We fill in all the other gaps or help out where there could be some things that are being missed.
Yeah.
Keep asking questions, how we can get the athletes better. And so I developed my own philosophy with that.
I think that's probably why when we do we look out for guests we think are unique or match some of our own philosophies or whatever. I was curious about Athlete Builder and how you did that, because I do almost a mirror thing with younger athletes where I chose to come down away from professionals and collegiate athletes or big time collegiate athletes because I'm getting a little older. I'm in that space now where, quite frankly, I don't want to wrestle with the egos, and it's not a bad thing. You got to have ego to be at that level.
You do.
And compete at that level. But I turned 60 this year, and I said, where's my best ability to help athletes? And it was high school, trying to get into college, young college. Sort of that right in there. And then I do a consulting online, and then I have a 1,500 square foot gym on my property. So I train there as well. So
a lot of similarities.
So I think as I was going through that, so I was through your information before I asked you to be a guest, I said, what's Athlete Builder?
Gotcha.
Because mine's called Ground Level 4, which we start at the bottom. Everything starts on the ground, yada, yada, yada. But no, I would be interested to follow, or I'm interested to follow what you're doing. But, later on after the podcast, get some additional information and talk back and forth. Because here's what I believe, Jim. I believe that we are far better together than we ever will be trying to compete with each other.
You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go with somebody else.
There you go.
Right.
There you go.
Yep.
So Jim, I teach a course in business leadership for exercise science, and there'll obviously be a sidebar later to this, but I'm curious from your perspective, coming obviously from finance and business, if you can delve into some of the rewards, some of the positives, some of the drawbacks in starting a fitness-based business from the ground up, where you have to obviously purchase a space. That space needs to be large enough to house X amount of athletes or X amount of
equipment,
right? Because at the end of the day, volume is key. The more people you get in, the more money you make. The more equipment you have, the more money you spend. So it's kind of one begets the other, right? Build it, and they will come. So kind of give us a little bit of maybe an abbreviated rundown on how you start, how you build that business into something that's successful. And then maybe we'll even talk about like business planning, structure that stuff.
Man, that's a whole day course. So
100%.
The short, and you're doing a whole semester of it at least. Most gym owners I find are good at coaching athletes, and they aren't good on the business piece. Other business owners aren't that great at coaching athletes, so they had that piece. So that was more me, better at the business side. So when I went into it, I'm really just a big dork. And I took the book off my shelf on how to write a business plan. And I used that to map out, and you go through your whole SWOT analysis and your competitors and your demographics. So this is from a financial standpoint, a very, very risky industry like restaurants. So banks aren't, if you're a startup, unless you have a lot of cash, they're not going to lend you money, or an SBA loan won't work. So
why? Pause right there. Why is it so risky? People need to know this. People need to understand this, because how many people go into business for fitness and think they can make a ton of money, and they have no idea what they're doing, no idea what they're getting themselves into? Why is it so?
Human nature is so fickle. They like the new shiny lure like a fish.
Yeah.
So Orange Theory takes off, and then CrossFit takes off, and then boot camp takes off, because people really struggle to understand that physically what makes the most different is your little compound interest effect, making love to the mundane and the boring. The most basic fundamentals propel you on for years if you stick with that compound interest effect. And people get a little bored, and they're like, well, this new thing is work. I'm going to try this new thing, because they don't want to inherently stick with the routine that gets you the results.
Yeah.
So when people's tastes change, they'll leave the gym, right? But when restaurants goes in and out of favor, they'll leave the restaurant. So if you're not in the flavor any longer, how do you keep people going? Right. And that's why, since there's that, they don't have that brand loyalty or stick-to-itiveness as much in that industry, that creates the increased level of risk in that business, in my opinion.
Keep it going. Keep it going along those same levels, and talk about, when you have your audience or your clientele or your potential client base or customers, and when you're trying to get them to stay, what's your approach, and what do you think is the best approach? May not be yours. You may use a combination or whatever.
Gotcha. When you're a client at the bank, if you have your checking account, there's about a 50% chance you're going to stay. Checking in an IRA, it's like 65. You get someone's mortgage or their trust work in the bank, they're there for a generation. If someone comes into the gym and why? Because there's inertia. It's a pain to have to change your checking account and all your auto pays. It's a pain to change your mortgage and all that stuff. Yeah. There's that inertia, right? So people want to, once your habits are set, and if you get into James Clear's Atomic Habits, he'll explain it way better than I ever could. Once they're set, it's a process to get out of that. So when they come to the gym, if they're getting results, that's a hook. Yeah. If they like the people that they're working out with, that's another hook. If they have a connection with the coaches, there's another one. If you have events, there's another one. If you give back to the community with charity events, there's another one. If you compete in things, there's another hook. If you handle their nutrition, if you can train the adults and then have a separate session for the kids so they're both there, you got to make that habit easy, obvious, attractive, and sustainable and satisfying. To keep them going and going and going.
In developing that habit, that cohesion, that commitment from them, you talked about 8 different steps, 8 different approaches that you need to choose to do.
Sure.
Which in and of themselves takes serious expertise. Exclude the whole idea of having qualified and experienced coaches. You take all those other pieces and them just collectively is a lot of work, a lot of intellect, a lot of savviness. If you had to place weight on any of them, if you were to scale them by weight, what would you say are the most important pieces? What are the must-haves? And what are the things that you might be able to get away with not being so great at, or maybe not even doing, and adapting later, or adopting later, I should say.
So you guys talked about this in your roundtable and podcast. And number one asset we'll ever have will be culture. So when I started the gym, I had 1/10 the equipment. I have a 10,000 square foot space. 5,000 was just empty. The culture was, hey, we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna have a good time. We're going to be in a little bit of pain. We're going to suffer together. We're not going to knock anyone down. One of our core values is enjoyment, but it's also, we have a second one with teamwork. So if you can have someone that's locking arms with you, where you have an ally and the culture is good, that's going to be over 50% of your success, probably closer to 80. All right.
Yeah.
You got to have the minimum equipment to do what you want to do.
Right.
And you got to have someone who actually has some intelligence that can get people to move correctly first, keeping them safe, and then just naturally progress them.
Now I'm gonna pick a fight a little bit, but not on purpose. So let's talk about Move Correctly and CrossFit.
So you're saying they're mutually exclusive, right?
I'm just throwing them up in the air.
Wait a second. We just went tangential. We were talking about a very specific subject to now we're attacking CrossFit, which I'm all for attacking CrossFit. I'm okay with that. But
sure,
let's not just completely shift the subject to the attack of CrossFit. Okay. Let's at least let the man go for the gut.
So Jim, this is Chris and I. Sometimes we'll throw a monkey wrench in the conversation.
Well, okay, I want to know. Here's what I want to know based on what you just said, Jim. You talked about culture, okay? There is infectiously good culture and infectiously bad culture.
From
a business perspective, how do you define that? I know what it is from a strength side. I know from my experiences what bad culture is like, what good culture is like, with your relationships between your coaches, with your relationships with your superiors, with your relationships with your student athletes or your athletes in general.
It's kind of the same in business, all right? Yeah.
Well, it could be. Well, I'm curious to hear what he's got to say.
Well, absolutely.
So just to be clear, you want me to answer the question about good and bad culture first, and then movements, and then CrossFit second?
I want you to forget about CrossFit right now.
Okay.
Put the CrossFit and the movement and that on the side for now.
Yeah. Well, I got plenty of answers to both, so that we can get back into that. No problem. So there's no mirrors on the wall when you walk in. Everyone walks in. Our clientele is soccer moms and soccer dads. It's not people trying to go to the CrossFit Games, that's for sure. It's not anyone trying to win anything material. It's people trying to lose body fat, put on some muscle. So they all walk in. That clientele, they're already afraid to even walk through the doors. I've had people show up at the gym, look at it, and then get back in the car and leave without even a conversation. So my main goal is for people to come in and not be afraid of what's in front of them and being able to, hey, I have some obstacle in front of me. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm sure I could handle it. So that you can, when you go home, you can handle the tough conversations with your kid and your spouse, and the same thing at work, or when you lose, or you have, someone has cancer or whatever. You can handle the adversity in front of you. So we want people to come in and be able to handle the adversity in front of them, of being uncomfortable, maybe with some weight on their back, maybe in some conditioning test. We want to make sure that they're comfortable being in discomfort to move forward. So the culture is, can you push through a little bit of pain, and can you have a good time doing it? The negatives that we see is when anyone starts to cheat, that's a problem. People are cheating reps, or so then someone's trying to compete against that person. Well, now the whole culture is going down the toilet, because now you're just trying to win it at all costs, and now
Right.
the whole workout is bad, and now the whole point of the stimulus is to improve physically. So once that starts happening, that's a real negative. Someone else being judgmental, or with the guys, what do you bench, bro, kind of a deal. That's going to just knock people down. I got no problems getting with people saying, hey, let's go a little bit more. Hey, you got another 3 reps in the tank. You shouldn't have quit so early. But knocking people down so they quit, and now just another example where they quit in their life, where they quit on their physical health again, that's just going to be another 5-year setback. Can't have that. So if that starts being pervasive with social media and everything else, my gym will crumble within weeks or months.
Yeah.
So that starts infiltrating. Got to either get rid of the coach or the athlete or both. So we have to guard against that all the time. I'd rather have people just make those micro little improvements with that compound interest effect and last 8 or 9, 10 years.
And yet the floor rack is very intimidating when you walk in and you've never experienced it before.
It is. People, what is that? Why are there rings? I'm like, it's this Chinese torture here where they draw and quarter you, or they see the ropes hanging from the ceiling. And right. I'm like, there's no reason for you to trust me, so I have to offer a money back guarantee if they start with the gym. And if people are just being horrible to you, you have to let me know, because I need to get rid of that. I have 6 kids. I need the business to work. I'm not going back to the financial world. I'm all in. All my eggs, all my investments liquidated to start this thing. So this has to work well. Once I can get them to focus on their whys, I got them shifting a little bit. If I can get deeper to the why that ties to their identity, I got a much better shot. So if I can have the big identity why with some of the superficial whys along the way, hey, let's focus on this versus this fear or something else, I got a better shot. I got to keep pushing them back to the whys that they're there. Got to have them make some friends right off the bat, so they have some allies there, so they're having a good time. You focus on your whys and you have a good time, then we got a shot. If you come in for 6 months, you probably stay a year. If you stay for a year, you're probably there for 10 years.
One of the hardest things in the world to do, especially with younger athletes, but with all of them, is to get them to understand that it doesn't happen right now.
Yes.
It happens over a period of time of doing the right things right.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I hear you talk about that psychological part of staying disciplined, being persistent, and all those other things that we think of as the mental side, what I hear is that that's something you take with you from being an athlete, afterwards, after being an athlete, and into life, or you pick up if you were not an athlete and you try to carry with you.
100%. So I totally agree with the instant gratification in the Amazon type world that we live in, where our packages are on the front step the next day. You can click your way to anything else online. So our mantra with Athlete Builder is win the day, because here's why. People will have a goal of, I want to lose 50 pounds or add 100 pounds in my deadlift, or I want to make a D1 scholarship. And that goal could be 6 months or 6 years off. That's such a long horizon. Right. How do you stay focused, right? So one, you're only going to be happy when you attain that goal. So you're not happy at all along the way. That kind of sucks. And once you do attain it, 24, 36, 48 hours later, you're not happy any longer. That kind of sucks too. So Our mantra of win the day applies to this. In the business world, you look at your critical factors that move the needle. Maybe it's sales, maybe it's your operations, maybe it's your brand, whatever. In the athlete's head, I look at their mindset that pushes them, it's their identities, their core values, their knowledge of their sport or how to train. Because even if you're really motivated or disciplined, if you don't know anything, you're going to be lost. Then what comes out of your mouth? How do you deal with your teammates on the field, your leadership team with your coaches, then your support team with your family, friends, trainers, etc. If I could find the critical factor that moves the needle the most in all three of those things and say, hey, here's our target for the week. We do that each day. You get a little win each day. Physically, what goes in your mouth is your nutrition. What do you do is your training, and then how do you recover? If I could find the critical factor in all three of those things. Well, if I got 6 targets that above all else, I need to do these things. Like for training, maybe you train with your C coach at school, but you got tight hips. So your critical factor might be an extra 15 minutes of mobility work. This is my extra target I'm hitting that day. You find one of those for all 6 of those things, you move the needle each day. Well, there's your instant gratification process where I could be motivated. Hey, these are my wins. I'm good today. And I know that if I compound interest all 6 of those things over and over and over again, well, the D1 scholarship is going to be pretty much guaranteed 4 years later. If I do all that. If not, then you can see that you're going to start to slip a little bit and move off in a different direction. But that's how I try to progress folks.
Let's talk about goal setting, since we're on the mental side a little bit. Yeah, and I hear you mention the goal of being a D1 athlete. How many athletes are really going to be D1 athletes? Even the ones
2% of the high school population that play sports.
Yeah, and that's small.
Yep,
that's
7%. 7% play in college, 2 play D1, and as more and more kids play, the percentage is going to be even worse, right?
Right.
Right.
So how do you temper that expectation? I never tell an athlete that, oh, you can't play D1, because anything.
Well, it can't be an expectation first and foremost. It
But-
cannot be an expectation.
But it is for them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it is more for the parent than anyone, because
A lot of truth there.
they have a philosophy that their child is better than what they are. They also have a philosophy that these early adopters, these individuals that are athletic, right?
Yeah.
They might not be elite athletes, but they are athletic. And because of that, they are more athletic than their peers. They stand out.
For now.
Early on.
For now, correct. Now separate those standout athletes and put them with all the other standout athletes and see who stands out. Now you have your pool of individuals that are going to fall into that 2% category.
Yep.
And of them, not everyone's going to make it, right? So,
100%.
and even though there are many institutions with many programs, football's all across the country, just for one, probably the biggest college sport next to basketball, right? In terms of just the breadth of teams that are available. And still, there are going to be several players that are near or quality enough to play at that level, but just don't get a shot because of, there's several reasons, obviously, right?
One thing
They don't
or
have
another.
the grades. The coach really didn't like their work ethic. The coach really didn't like one play that they made, and they thought that, that was going to affect them. The list could go on and on and on as to why athletes get removed or redacted from a list of here's selectables.
Over the years, you're right, Chris. Over the years, I've seen hundreds of D1 athletes playing NAIA, D3, D2. But when you look at him, you go, that's a Division I athlete, and then you find out later, okay, yeah, he had an opportunity, or he decided he just wanted to play football and have fun in his mind, so he didn't want to play D1, or whatever, school was more important, whatever the case may be. So yeah, the numbers are low, but there's a lot of ways to get to where you're going. And that's what I tell athletes. You don't always have to play D1. Even if I get a slow developer, the opposite of what Chris is talking about, those standout guys. If I get a guy I know that is, or even a young lady I know, okay, you're the youngest person in your class, and physically you look like the kids in 8th grade instead of the kids that are freshmen. What do we have going on? So you got to think about that. Where are they developmentally opposed to where they are, academically and in school, and what's going to put them where? So you can speak intelligently. Anyway,
and to your point, sure, not every single athlete that is average is going to be average forever. Some, again, take a little bit more time to develop. Some don't have that surge in performance until they hit puberty, right? Some don't have that drive for the sport until later in life. I mean, there are several, because obviously pro sports isn't as large as it appears. But in a group of pro athletes across this country and alone, there are several athletes that picked up the sport in high school.
Late.
Very
Sure.
late,
Yeah.
but were naturally gifted athletically and just immediately accelerated, right? And propelled themselves into a professional career in a sport where they thought, I'm just going to play this because my friends are playing, not even realizing the athletic prowess was there. Now, someone like us might see that kid running around in the playground and say, that kid's an athlete, right? Just because of what we're observing. The kid's parents might not know that. They might be focused on school, all great, right? But yeah, people definitely get missed too. I think the
All the time.
majority of those that make it are those that obviously stand out. But take the standouts also, and let's flip the script to say that there are standouts that get drafted in the first round and never play a game, right?
Yeah.
Never get an opportunity. It's rare, but they might get that opportunity and totally blow it. And it's like, well,
crash and burn.
They were really good here, but man, they can't handle the pressure. Or they just can't, at this level, they're not the big dog anymore. They just don't know how to cope.
Right.
But there's no desire once they figure out that level, the amount of work it takes.
Right.
Yeah, or back to Jim's point earlier. They got there. That was the goal.
Yeah.
Now they're like, all right, I don't really care. I just wanted to get here.
Sure. Different goal.
They're not
Different
motivated
mindset,
now.
different approach, different work ethic, different ability to handle discomfort, different willingness, and it comes down to their habits on uncovering those components and then their willingness to address them.
So this perspective that we're talking about, we've kind of been in two worlds, but I like the fact, Jim, that you bring to the table in this discussion a business acumen that we don't find a lot in our world.
Sure.
And I don't mean that negatively. Man, I've hit my head on more walls and stumbling blocks from the business perspective because that's not my forte. And I tell people
you don't know what you don't know.
Right. So through the years, I've asked people and I kind of evolved over the years into where I fit more from a business perspective as opposed to the coaching part. The coaching part, the relationship part. Well, let me put it this way. The relationship part translated from the coaching to the business. Everything else was something you have to pick up and make fit. So if you got good soft skills as a coach, you have to do that same thing on your business side. If you have good accountability skills as a coach, you have to do that same thing on your business side. And I hate to say it, but I didn't always do that.
I did not either.
So that's one of the things I think our young audience, our practitioners out there that are starting in this realm of performance and exercise and managing facilities and running coaching businesses from a performance side, we probably don't talk about enough on here, and I'm appreciating this conversation more and more as we go along. But anyway.
So how then do you develop those skills if they're not taught either at home or during education?
Right.
How do you develop those business acumen skills as a practitioner in a field that is, as we have discussed, very business oriented, but also very people oriented?
Right. The answer is a little obvious now because I'm almost 11 years in. Right off the bat, mind you, MBA from Purdue, worked at JP Morgan, worked at a hedge fund. Those are big institutions dealing with cash flow statements and net income statements and industry analysis where you're looking for an undervalued investment opportunity. My business was just me. That's nothing like that at all. So though I had some business acumen and I could do accounting and I can run all the statements, I was so stupid to think if I build it, they will come. That's pretty dumb. If there's no marketing and no one knows about your product, even if it's the best one, that's pretty bad. And I didn't learn that lesson for a number of years to the point where bills weren't getting paid, car got repossessed, I'm sleeping at the gym, and I'm like, what's going on here? What's going on here? So success also leaves clues. I went back to some of the guys that lent me some money to start the gym that are private equity guys. And I'm like, I've only worked at the big company level. I don't understand this mom and pop, 100,000 a year revenue, 200,000, 300,000, and $400,000 a year revenue business, and how to make that work. So one of the guys is a private equity investor, and he says all the companies he works with, he makes them read Gino Wickman's book called Traction, and then runs you through all these pieces and asks you all the questions. What's your company's culture? What are your core values? What's your value proposition? What are the things that make you unique? What's your 1-3? It goes through your goals, all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, for small business, great. I didn't know that. So you don't know what you don't know. You got to find some people that do. Get a mentor, just like your basketball coach is your basketball mentor. If you're not reading every day or listening to podcasts or on YouTube and funneling in information, pumping it into your head every day in some habit, you're missing out. You're asking your athletes to learn about their sport. You have to learn about your sport. And one of the things I also learned is, though I might be good at coaching, connecting with people, finding their whys, finding their motivations, and pushing them, the more I coached in my gym, the worse the gym did, because that's just one piece. So I can only expand my reach to whatever those classes are. If I could train a staff of 10 coaches to replicate me, even at, this is arrogant to say, so I have to be humble when I say this, but let's say I'm really good, humbly, right? If I can get them to like 80% of me or 90% of me, is that good enough? Probably, to keep them safe, keep them progressing. Well, then I could work on scaling the business, marketing the business, networking, so that you bring in more revenue. You can hire more coaches, hire more equipment, expand your reach, offer more services with mobility, nutrition, sports performance, etc. The head coach in football doesn't spend as much time with those players. He's coaching the coaches. He's dealing with the general manager. He's dealing with the owner. He's on the radio show.
Right.
So if you're trying to be $100,000 a year revenue business, you need a square footage for that, this many clientele, this much staff. If you're trying to make an impact where you can reach all the volleyball girls across the country, okay, well, that's different. And so you need to understand how to scale and build it up. So I'm still barely learning that piece. So I hire other mentors, or I'll go to a clinic on this. And there's trial and error just because you read it in a book. Well, I read in a book 5x5 is great for back squat, but it's also 8x3 or a heavy single. Well, which is it? What kind depends? So just because you learn this, took this course, you got to apply it and take notes and be relentless in your approach of figuring out what's working and what's not working for you. Yeah. And it's all along that feedback loop.
Because it might be all three.
Yeah, right. Darn right. And it probably is.
Yeah.
Right.
So, those kind of things, we sometimes forget, along the lines of Chris and I have talked a lot about with other guests about the soft skills, being able to start a relationship and nurture that and grow it. It's one thing to network and meet somebody. It's another thing. It's another thing to take that card or to take that podcast interview and stay connected to that person and continue a conversation. And that's one of the things I think that probably we as a profession could do better. There's a lot of networking going on, but keeping the conversation going is what I think we could probably do better. I mean, the mentorship happens. I think there's a lot of that to some degree. The introductions and the hey, haven't seen you since last time. What's been going on? But it's all that connective tissue in between those big events where you meet each other that we probably don't do as well as we could on a professional scale.
It's probably true in every industry. And we had clients that will give us $10 million at the bank. You got to talk to them more than once a year for them to feel like you guys have a relationship. And if you're only eye to eye with the people on your basketball team every other day, it's that relationship matters so much that they won't put out unless they think you care about them, right? And then it comes down, if this is actually the goal, then what is your process? What is your process? So is it really a goal? Okay, if this is really going to be something I'm going to work on that because it's lacking and it's going to move the needle. All right, so like every Monday morning from 6:30 to 7:30, I'm going to have a list of people I want to reach out to this week and just say, hey, I'm here for you. I'm looking for you. How can I help? Here's a tip. Here's a free tip. So when I meet with folks, and if they haven't, I offer a book, because if you see behind me, this is a small fraction of the books in my downstairs library. So if I meet you guys, I'm like, hey, have you not read Traction? All right, I'll bring you a copy. So if I give something to you first, 9 times out of 10, I'm not getting anything back. That's okay. But one time I will. And if I do that 100 times, now I got 10 times it's coming back to me. If I give it to that athlete and I push that person and get that person better, some people are still going to quit, but some will still stick. So with you and Chris and I, we keep pushing each other. I keep developing you guys. At some point down the road, you're going to be like, you know what? I got this kid. They're in Indianapolis, and he's there for the combine. He should probably go by Jim's place and then talk to him a little bit about mindset and focus, or get a workout in before the combine starts, or whatever. Usually it comes back at some point.
Yeah.
But that if you have this goal, like you said, then the next question is what's process, because this is hard for me to say because I don't totally agree with it. But Tim Ferriss, I picked up one of his books at the airport. I just thumbed through it, and on the one page I open up, and he writes, "Goals are for losers. Systems are for winners." I'm like, well, I got goals. I'm goal oriented. He goes, "No, you can have targets along the way, milestones along the way. It's the system that makes the winners. That's how you get those goals and those wins every day. It's how you hit more than just one goal at a time. It's how you a goal year after year. So you can still have your targets, but the systems is what makes things happen."
So what he's talking about is systematic processes, a plan, a derived plan that has steps and stages of achievement built into it that are attainable, which is something that we teach undergraduates all day long. Do not overstage someone. Do not give them something too challenging, especially in the very beginning, because they're going to fail. And that person may not deal with failure well. And you will never know how they deal with failure until they are presented with failure.
Right.
And from a business perspective, that could be a loss. It could be a huge win. So it's a big gamble if you push too much, too hard, too fast.
So I just label it. Here's your level of comfort, and I'm trying to expand you just to here. I'm going to say I'm not going to push you out to here because it's not sustainable. It's too much.
Right.
I'm giving you a new nutrition program, a new recovery program, a new squat variation program. It's overwhelming. This is your level of comfort. I'm going to push it to here. I need you to be a little uncomfortable in these moments so that this becomes your new homeostasis, right? And then once you're here, I'm going to expand you a little bit further. So I got to tell them this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And this is why I got to have you do this so we can advance and evolve, because your goal was this. Yeah. It requires this level of expansion. So I
need you to drink less. I need you to drink 4 less sodas per week. I need you to
or a day.
I need you to show up to the gym. Right? I need you to show up to the gym 3 days a week instead of 2 days a week. Goals
just had that conversation.
Small and successfully available to everyone, bearing they will let go of this idea of eminent control. Oh, well, I can't because of this. I can't because of that. If the I can't to your mouth, you can, you will if you want to.
Sure. And if we devise some method for it to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not just not just will.
Yeah.
Like the way I stay healthier is I don't have a lot of chips in the house.
Right.
So for me,
because if you don't have the willpower.
I don't want to bet on the willpower. I want to create friction.
Yeah. Yep. It's can't have them goodies in the house if I want to keep those 15 pounds at bay. That's
it's like psychologically too, right? It's if you're feeling stressed, or any sort of emotional strain is coming into play, you're going to default to old habits.
Yep.
Right. So if we'll just say that eating is your default, if stress comes in, okay, well, how do you curb that? Well, you don't have the things that would elicit that response in you in the first place. You try to avoid that initial stress response in the first place. And then you extract those things that would facilitate that stress. 100%. So if it's chocolate, right, you just remove it from the house. If you remove it from the house long enough, your body, your brain will stop craving it.
Yes.
That craving goes away.
I don't even care if I have it.
Yeah, that psychological part goes away as well.
But if it's there and it's the default, you're going to it. You're going to it because the willpower is not strong enough in many cases for someone to say, not today, not today, tomorrow.
So you train your conscious and your subconscious. You are still in control. And if you choose not to do that, you're still training your conscious and subconscious.
Right. Just negatively if you choose not to train it.
You got it, brother.
A lot of steps, a lot of things we're talking about are steps. I know Chris and I and you, we talk to our athletes about, we talk to parents of athletes about, because a lot of times, let's touch that piece before we head off to La La Land and talk about the other subject. But let's talk about that piece when you have a younger athlete or an athlete that has a entourage or other adults that are involved with what they're doing. How do you get them on board with what you're trying to say? Because over the years, I've dealt with it in numerous ways, but I've had a lot of kickback from, collegiate athletes who have this group of people who are following them around that think they know what's best for them. Or you have the well-meaning parents who don't want to relinquish just a little bit of control so that I can help them help the athlete. So what are your steps to
Man,
dealing with either one of those?
super hard, right? Tons of friction there. One, can you even get in front of the parents and talk with them? Will they even show up? Or if you're dealing with like a travel baseball team, would you be able to get in front of those parents at all?
Yeah,
Right.
That's a good point.
And
That's a huge hurdle.
Huge. Let's say you're in front of them and the mindset, the pervasive culture is X. Travel baseball, it's, from what I witnessed, you're playing 10 months a year for a 10 to 16-year-old, 10, 11 months a year. You're doing high-level college volume of specialized activity.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing that, and you're saying, hey, that's not optimal. And they're like, well, everyone else is doing it. And I said, yeah, I know. And the percentages are still the same. 7% go to college to play sports and 2% play D1.
Right.
I said, well, I'm 49. Here's the deal. At my age, when I was a kid, if you played in rec league or CYO, if you were good at baseball, you made the travel all-star team, and you got an extra 2 to 6 weeks of playing at the higher level against better talent.
Right.
That those extra reps are now in the business world your competitive advantage. That's how you're better, because your skill level has improved. Well, now everyone's skill level is at that high piece where they're doing all the specialized stuff all the time. Their competitive disadvantage is that they are unbelievably weak, unbelievably less athletic, and not powerful. Everyone knows who the strongest and fastest and most powerful kid is on the team. Why is that not you? And that's easily trainable. When you have all these ACL tears, why are your glutes and core and hamstrings so weak?
Right.
What if I made you super strong and powerful and fast, and when the football team was in there, they had 75 kids with 1 or 2 coaches. Even with a great coach, that's not sustainable, right? And if you were stupid like me as a kid, you're screwing around trying to do something that you shouldn't be doing at a heavier weight because you're trying to impress your buddies or the girl that's walking by. So we have smaller classes and we deal with the athletes that way. But our approach is, let's bulletproof your body against injury as best we can, build up that level of strength so that you can then apply force and power and become faster and more powerful. And lucked out. So a kid that never played sports growing up, my son plays football at Ball State, which is a lower level D1 program.
Yeah.
But his dad owned a gym. His dad owned a gym, so it's like, hey, he was 205 and squatted 500.
Yeah.
It helps.
Well, no excuse not to be ready from that perspective.
Nope. From that perspective. Now, for me, even getting my own son in the gym, when he wouldn't listen to me because I'm dad, I had to get some of his buddies in the gym, see how they're progressing. I had to do an end around, right?
Give you a similar story. My daughter played at Coastal Carolina, played soccer.
Okay.
And getting her in the gym initially when she was in high school took me getting the rest of her team in the gym.
Yeah.
Because I was dad.
And then I brought on another strength coach for the sports performance side, who ended up coaching on the football team, and now he's an athletic director for a school in Evansville, Indiana. But my kid really liked him, so he's getting the same verbiage from Coach Dockery as it was from me, but it's coming from someone else. Okay, so now that works better. Now, Dan, will answer your. I don't think I even answered that original question about how do you deal with the mindset.
You did.
You got to build trust. You got to show them results, right? And you got to point out. Sometimes I just got to point out the math or the physics behind it. Like, you're putting this much strain on your shoulders. This is why you have dead arm. This is why you need Tommy John surgery, because your upper back and scapula are so weak to help protect it. And you just show statistically, there's how many kids with these injuries. They're playing this much more volume. Can we fix that? Yes, here you go. Don't practice as much. Train your body to be athletic. Do 2 sports, not 1 sport. So neurologically you improve. All right, now you got a shot.
Well, we're
still going to
of
need some luck.
No, speaking of that neuromuscular part, that neurological part, I'm dealing with levels of just simple posture and body alignment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They're on their phones and their shoulders are so far forward, their necks and upper backs are all messed up. They sit all day long. Even me sitting here, my shoulders are forward. If I'm driving a car, or if you're at the table eating, their posture's bad. Yeah.
So those kind of things and the body alignment from the I call it the here's a old man reference again. The Yosemite Sam or Daffy Duck walk. Right. Well, if you do that slow, guess what's going to happen when you try to move fast? I've seen it on all kind of athletes.
Injury.
Well, it's not necessarily an injury, but you're taking away some of your ability to be explosive. You're taking away, to produce force into the ground. A whole bunch of things happen because your body alignment is bad, to include injury.
Yeah,
so
100%.
But anyway, we have kicked this dead horse around the barnyard a little bit, but it's been a great conversation. I want to make sure that we get to the movement and CrossFit.
Okay.
Now, early on in the CrossFit world, it was everything for the sake of more weight
Or speed.
Yeah,
More reps in less time.
Yeah, because my daughter started that. She started doing some CrossFit, and then she started calling me and saying, "Dad, why am I feeling this in my shoulder and this in my knee and this in my back?" And I said, "Well, what are you doing?" And she started giving me these workouts of the day. I said, "Well, okay." I said, "Not a bad principle." I said, "But how much weight you putting on there? And are you paying attention to your technique and your form? Are you doing these things?" I started talking about alignment and those kind of things. She said, "No, Dad, because we have to meet a time." And I'm like, I said, I'm going to tell you not only as your lifetime trainer physically, but also as your father and safety. Stop.
Right.
And that was it. I said, you know how to do this stuff. You've done it, 6 years before you started this. So I said, don't put yourself in a position of danger. I hate to call it danger, but risk. There you go. Thank you. Position of risk for one more rep,
For what? Yeah.
or speed, or one more pound.
Yep.
I said the risk is too high for any of those three. Your thoughts on that and why?
So, great question. A lot of truth to it. So let's talk broadly, because I'll get this. Hey, I heard CrossFit gives a lot of injuries. I said, let's talk about CrossFit injuries, but let's also be fair. There's plenty of runners with bad knees, bad hips, bad backs.
Right.
Horrible technique, but they love running, and they look at it like, hey, it's not a hard, heavy rep of one stride, but when you're running a half marathon of a bad posture, you're gonna have some problems.
Right.
You can look at swimmers with their shoulders and their scaps. You can look at plenty of powerlifters, or with me competing in strongman. Basically, by definition, when I say what is this, I say I pick up really stupid stuff for no real reason. I pick up the dumbest stuff you could think of. So competing, high school, college, pro, that's not for health and wellness. That's a whole different deal, right? So if you're trying to be a D1 basketball player, you're not trying to be well-rounded and healthy. You're trying to win. And then, or whatever. Where any sport has problems is when they try to compete and they realize that that's not really their goal or should be their goal. And you'll see that in CrossFit, because there is a bit of a culture thing where we want people to push themselves into that level of discomfort. That's a real thing. Then, obviously, with that kind of return, whether you're investing in a stock or in your back squat, there's inherent risk. It's a lot easier to squat just the bar. Squatting 500, there's more risk. Or doing just the bar 1,000 reps in a row without breaking, there's risk. What is our approach? Because that is the thing. There's a lot of shoulder injuries in CrossFit, right? At the same time, at the basic certification courses, that's never taught. They're taught, hey, knees out, butt down, no butt wink, upright posture, tight your core for your squats. They're teaching you the right form and technique. Then it becomes your level of discipline in your culture with your coach and your athletes. Because once you lose that discipline in your technique or your approach, your mindset, then real risk. And I love Jocko Willink's equation, discipline equals freedom. Well, you take away your discipline, you're going to have some less freedoms. Your daughter's going to get hurt. Right? Because the discipline's gone. What do? We subscribe to Westside Barbell's conjugate approach. Monday's a heavier lower body day. Work up to a decent set of 5. Not necessarily a 5-rep max, but how you feel today. And there's coaches, and we're all fallible, and we make mistakes, me included.
Yeah.
We're trying to be relentless and critiquing their form as they're squatting. And we also got to make sure the spotters are there and they know what to do. But if we're working up to a decent set of 5 or 3 or 1, then it's for that day. Yeah, can you squeeze out another rep? Maybe, but why? So you get a gold star, or in a CrossFit competition you get a little trophy, like a little card like this. That's not why we're here. Remember why you're here? To be your soccer mom, soccer dad, to be healthier, longevity, living with your kids and all. So we're going to work a little bit heavier, and then we want our conditioning, our WODs, our workouts of the day, like you said.
Right.
We want our conditioning to complement a lower body day. The Tuesday is going to be a heavier upper body, like in conjugate, and then complementary with that. At the end of each session, we have extra accessories for building strength, and then we have an extra mobility piece. So those that come to our session, they run 60 to 75 minutes, depending on how long you can stay. Wednesday is kind of like a deload, full body deal. Thursday and Friday, it's more dynamic effort, speed, Lower body, Friday is speed. Upper body, Saturday is like Wednesday. Every once in a while, though, on a Wednesday, we'll put in like, all right, this is a longer conditioning piece. It's very lightweight. We want your mind to condition to being in pain a little bit longer. Form starts breaking down. The coaches come by and say, hey, break, stop, don't do that. Do people not listen to us? For sure.
Right.
If it becomes pervasive, we got to make some changes. We have to remind them what the stimulus is for. We're trying to get you guys to be able to be suffering a little bit longer so that we callous your mind a little bit. But we don't want you guys, like, hard and fast and injured is not the recipe for success. Tons of shoulder tears, gets on Facebook pretty quick, the gym breaks down.
Right.
Can't have that. Does that happen in gyms? All the time.
Right.
We also have powerlifters that are blowing out their knees because they're squatting in suits and they can't handle the load. Can't
handle the load, exactly.
Can't handle the load. So does that happen? Well, yeah, everywhere. We work against that diligently. Our mantra is relentless and how we try to apply our 6 core values. Do we make mistakes? Every day. Got to keep fighting against that.
One of the things I talk about with and just, I poke fun at folks and sometimes I'll bring CrossFit stuff just for the conversation.
Sure.
I don't have anything. I think there's more than one right way to do things as long as we're all going the same direction with safety, caring for individuals, those kind of things. If we're all going that way and we're thinking like that, we're fine.
We're good.
I do a lot. Keep that in mind. I do a lot with especially athletic stance and a squat where knees out, feet out from a performance perspective. That's a bad alignment for me when you're squatting because it's not in your athletic stance for movement.
Right.
So, but a lot of times you can't handle the same load using that technique. So I have to remind the athletes, what are we trying to accomplish? We want you strong through the center of your body and your core, your trunk and your hips. We want you strong there and not just to see how much weight we can do or to be an Olympic lifter. You have to, or a power lifter. You have to make some adjustments in your alignment, your technique in order to do those things. But just to generate force from the ground up, you don't. You can do that from your base because that's what you're going to operate out of.
In that situation, what you're doing is, as a power lifter, right? You are performing a movement for the achievement of that movement, essentially any way possible to achieve that movement.
Can you move the most weight?
Yeah.
Right.
In that one setting, because that's the sport. That's the goal.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
So whatever movement adaptation you make, whatever mechanical advantage you exploit, whatever dysfunctional pattern you have, you are going to just skip some of those things to try to get that load up.
Yeah, and that's okay, barring injury, because it's the competition. You're prepared.
Well, I mean, hopefully the preparation process leading up to that has helped you to try to rectify maybe some of those dysfunctional patterns. And if not, maybe it's exploited some of those patterns because those patterns actually give you a mechanical, right? But you've tried to tweak them in a way that they're a bit more resilient and that they're also not as pointed towards resulting in injury.
Yeah,
right?
Jim alluded to that earlier with the statement he was making in reference to I just forgot. What were we talking about, Jim? Yeah, there you go.
I mentioned runners. There's plenty of injuries there that people don't talk about.
Right,
because of bad posture.
Yeah.
The point of training for athletes is so they can apply their skill. Right. Yeah. The point for CrossFit is for people to be well rounded and average at everything, so they're healthier. So, to our point, like on Monday is a max effort lower day. Well, my wife's 52. I'm 49, and I don't squat a fraction of what I used to squat, and neither does she. So, she's looking at some point a knee replacement, but we want to hold that off until in her 60s because you only get 20 years out of it. So on a heavy lower body day, does she squat? Not often. She might be in the belt squat, or she might be dragging a sled for 15 minutes with some intervals to build up some leg strength. But does she have to squat? No. Can we build some leg strength that day? Yes. So we got to, the goal is, whatever's written on the board is just a template. Then it's how well do we apply it? You don't even have to squat that day to get good leg stimulus. You can get plenty of application. It's your ability to adjust.
So, well, look, I hate to get to these parts, especially when the conversation is flowing like it's flowing. But if we don't want to get in trouble with the people who are chopping up the films later, we need to stay as close to 60 minutes as we can. We've gone over, but that's okay because that leaves room for further discussion. And
for sure.
I'm going to say this, Jim. I have really appreciated you coming on and taking the baton and running a little bit with us. It's been a great conversation, and we're going to do it again.
Great.
In some way, shape, or form. Chris, you have anything else for Jim?
No, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you for sharing your time with us and your knowledge with us. I think that our listeners, maybe even some of our old guests, who can really benefit from the information that you provided and we discussed today. And hopefully some of my students will listen to it.
Great.
Most definitely.
The goal is impact. The goal is impact before you die, right? So that's what we're looking for. Yeah,
for sure. This has been Performance Talk with Yul Gordon and Chris Costa. Today's guest was Mr. Jim Beebe. We'll see you again real soon, guys.